You and I both. I have to look at it like 3 different times to figure out like yeah.
Working on this, then
Not intuitive. So probably gonna have to move time around. All good. I just want to, not jump in like completely dry. Want me to go ask him? Okay.
loosely enough in the scope.
Dave? Well, welcome, everybody. This is the Flagler County Board of Commissioners and Planning and Development Board Joint Workshop Agenda. If you'd all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, if you join me in observing a moment of silence as we think about all the things we should be grateful for and our first responders and how they keep us safe every day, and our men and women in the armed forces who stand the watch 24 hours a day. Please join me. Thank you. Well, we're here today as a joint group to hear a presentation by Inspire Placemaking Collective Incorporated. And Mr. Chairman, with you, is it okay if we proceed on that? You ready to go?
We are ready.
Okay. Adam, are you going to do the introduction?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Adam Mangle, Growth Management Director. As we've talked with both boards previously, Planning Board, Board of County Commissioners, about our comp plan update, this is that kind of a first official kickoff for both groups. And so we've selected Inspire Placemaking Collective out of Orlando. They were a very qualified firm, highly qualified, has a good reputation in the state and beyond for work of this type. They have what really impressed us the most with what they had come up with was what we believe is a level of detail, a level of collaboration, level of input that we're looking for with this update. Purpose of this joint workshop, and not that I want to steal their thunder, but is to get your feedback. We'll also have an opportunity at the end for some public comment, but our goal here with this is to get your feedback. And so that's our effort with this. You're going to hear about the timing, the effort that where we are, where we're intending to go with this. You're going to hear about our time frame, some major milestones, checkpoints where we'll have, I think we got 2 more of these that will come up after this. And so we'll talk also about those next steps and wanting to be able to also craft this how you want it to be ultimately done. And so we're not on a fixed path at this point. We've got a good path. We think we know where we're heading, but at the same time, if you've got something as a course correction, we want to know it because we want to make sure we get the product that both of you want that really meets our needs, that sets us forward till 2050. With that, I'll turn it over to Chris and Nick with Inspire Placemaking Collective. First, Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam.
Well, good evening. Thank you so much for joining together to have this kickoff meeting. We don't always get to do this as part of our projects. It's a wonderful idea to have both boards. Sure.
Chris, could you introduce yourself?
Absolutely.
Please.
Chris Darty. I am the project manager for the Flagler 2050 Comprehensive Plan update. I'm also a principal with Inspire Placemaking Collective out of Orlando, Florida. Like I said, we don't always get this opportunity to have both boards in the same room at the same time to kick it off. And not only that, but we've got 2 other opportunities to get your feedback as we move through this process. So this is really exciting. What a wonderful job crafting the scope and getting us ready to update the plan in what we think is the best opportunity to engage the public in an inclusive, equitable fashion, but also make sure we address all those major concerns that we have here in the community. We're going to talk a little bit about your project team. So this is just part of the project team. Nick Hill is the co-project manager on this project and our lead project planner as well. We're going to give you an idea of what the scope of services looks like from not only just the actual working through the process and the scope and give you an idea of where we're at with that, but also the timeline and the time frame. And then really this is all about you all today. So we want to get your initial thoughts and ideas. This is all part of that discovery process. We don't live here in Flagler County, so we're completely objective view, third party, looking at the comprehensive plan. And so we want to make sure we address those issues and understand what those are early so that we can address them as we move through the public workshops and get some ideas and feedback from the public on those issues. Okay, so you know your folks from Flagler County, the county administrator. We've got Adam and Chuck and Gina and Hannah, and I understand we've got another planner coming on board here soon. So wonderful team here at Flagler County. As I mentioned, Nick is my co-project manager. You'll probably see Eric and Pat and Gabby as we work through the different public engagement process, or pardon me, the public engagement workshops and different events as we tend to bring the experts that have different expertise in different facets of planning and development. Okay, so you probably know this already, but it's always nice to have a little bit of a refresher. The comprehensive plan, it's a high-level document. It's meant to implement the county's vision. All municipalities, jurisdictions here in the state of Florida are required to have a comprehensive plan, and you are required to look at the plan every 7 years. That's called the evaluation and appraisal process. It's not as onerous as it used to be. It used to be you had to create this report, and then you had to, identify every policy in the plan, and how do you intend to address each one of those policies that either were accomplishing the goal or not. Now it's not as onerous. You just write a letter, and the state says, okay, you're good, move on. But the county decided that we needed to really go through the full update process outside of the year, because that gives you way more flexibility. If you were to engage in the year process with the state, you only get 12 months to update your plan. That's the whole thing. Plus, the state will put you through that state coordinated review process, which is a 60-day review, and they issue what's called an ORC report. It's not fun. So this gets you out of that process and gets you to go through a more of a visioning process with the community. So getting back to the comprehensive plan, it helps, of course, your boards in creating local decisions, and of course provides guidance to the local landowners and developers here in the community. So as I mentioned, the why, not only is it required by statute, but over the course of time, again, this was updated back in 2011, so shortly after the Community Planning Act was enacted, things have changed. We've got a lot more population here in the county, so every county in the state of Florida is growing. Flagler at one point used to be the fastest growing county. So things are changing. The desires of the community change over time. So that's why it's important to look at your plan every 5-10 years to make some tweaks that address the community's desires. We also need to understand what's going on with public facilities. So we've got level of service standards that are tied to concurrency. We want to make sure that as we're evaluating development and the impacts of those developments, that we have adequate utilities and public facilities to provide for those developments and the new population being served here in the county. So that is the reason why we're updating the plan. This is a snapshot of what your plan looks like today, made up of a number of elements or chapters. Future land use is probably one you're all very, very familiar with. That's one you probably talk about a lot with comp plan amendments and so forth. Conservation, coastal management, recreation, open space housing, all of those that you see in the green, those are required elements by statute. The one, economic development, there in the white is an optional element. And the reason why it's optional is because, one, it's not required by the statute. You are supposed to address some aspects of economic development and future land use, but when a county or city determines that it's an issue within that community, they create these economic development elements to heighten that issue. So we know we need to create jobs, and to do that, you've got to have coordinating mechanisms with your economic development organizations as well as the groups here at the county. So that element is optional, but it is one that is very important to the county. Okay, so as I mentioned, future land use. I'm sure you recognize this beautiful map with all the beautiful colors. That is your future land use map. We're not going to go through that today. I only show that just to give you, an idea of what we're looking at as we're working through the future land use element, as well as getting an idea of the spatial relationship of the county and the cities that are within the county. Okay, we've got a project website. So it's a soft launch right now. We just launched it today. We have a survey ready to rock and roll for folks to take. We have a community idea wall, which is a forum function where folks can post ideas and thoughts and receive feedback during that discussion, and thumbs up, thumbs down, different comments. We have the schedule posted on the website, and as we get the public workshops nailed down in terms of date, times, location, those will be updated as well. So we have 3 public workshops that we'll be doing through the course of the project, and this website will be the avenue where all that information will live and breathe. We'll also be posting on social media and other avenues with the county as new information is updated on the site. The QR code is active, so you can scan that with your phone if you'd like tonight. And we have the shortened URL, that's tinyurl.com/Flagler 2050. Okay, what does our timeline look like? We're here at the star there, that actually should say July 17th. So we've had our project kickoff internally with the team. And so we've already started collecting data and information from county staff. And as you saw, we've got our project website up and running. We'll have 3 of these joint meetings with the boards, as well as 3 public workshops. The process for updating a comp plan really kind of functions in 3 different phases. So we have the first phase, which is public engagement, which is why getting that project website up and running was vital and key to this whole process. And then the next phase, or phase 2, is updating the plan. So we have to update all the data and analysis for each one of those elements, as well as evaluate all the policies, goals, objectives, and provide updates to those. And then we go into the adoption process. Do you have a question?
Yeah, Chris, where are the public workshops going to be held?
We haven't determined the venues just yet, and we can discuss that
Okay.
as you have ideas. We're welcome to those. And as I mentioned, that third phase is that the adoption process, and so that's those are the big key milestones. Let's get through our public engagement, which will give us the ideas of how we're going to update the plan. And then we go into that plan update process. Takes several months to identify all the changes that need to occur, and then we're working with staff and getting feedback on all those. And throughout this process, if you notice, we're coming back to you at each one of those steps to get your thoughts, your ideas and input. Okay, now this is the reason we're here tonight, is to go ahead and get those initial thoughts. And we'd like to keep it kind of a rather open forum for this evening, rather than curating a specific exercise, because again, we've just kicked this off. We've just started. We don't have any preconceived notions about what items we need to address in the plan. We want to hear it from you directly. If you have ideas on where we should have our public workshops, we'd love to take that feedback. Nick's going to go ahead and start writing these down so that we can make sure that you can see that we're cataloging each one of your comments.
Well, if you want to start with the workshops, it seems to me if we look at the unincorporated areas, which is what this affects, we've got the Outer Bank, if you will, and then we've got West County.
Yes.
So the workshops have to take place in those areas. So I would think first one may be at Malacompra Community Center, and Leanne, where do you think out there west? Where do you think?
Yeah, so it would probably be two different areas. What's that, Old Paul Creek? Paul Creek, does that sound right, Mike? In that area, and then Hidden Trails
Are those community?
Those are both
excuse
community
me,
centers of
community
ours.
centers?
But that, I think, would be a good 3 places to start.
That'd be great. And to the extent that those community centers are, have a look, have Wi-Fi or, some AV, maybe projection equipment and so forth, or we can coordinate that as we get closer to that point. But that's typically what we're thinking about in terms of what types of engagements we can do and in different exercises.
No, out west. Isn't that the third one she mentioned?
No, those are both out west.
Well, we need one down south,
Plantation Bay area.
further south than that, down where the flooding and all that is. Yeah, maybe we'll give you a fourth one to think about.
Okay.
Adam, what's down there where we have all the new building going up and the occasional flooding and it's south, over near Ormond,
Hunter's Ridge.
Huntington Village.
Airport Road, Hunter's Ridge.
maybe Hunter's Ridge?
There's a community center there at Huntington Villas, I think. I don't know how big it is, but we could try to do something there.
Okay, Nick, if you'd put that down, Huntington Villas, and then we'll smooth this out to get 3 rather, or maybe you can do 4, I don't know.
Chairman,
Yes,
did Maury Hussein make his community center yet?
no.
And I did want to mention, as I said before, we have no preconceived notions about what the issues are. We let it come to us, and the exercises that we develop for these workshops are specifically curated for the community. So as we start talking to different stakeholders, to staff, we start to understand what those community issues are. That's how we develop the exercises for the workshops.
You had beach management on there was one of the deals. We're developing a beach management plan. Does that just feed right into this document?
So, right, so the vulnerability assessment that's going on through the planning
Well, then
council right now.
how we're going to manage the beach?
Right. So coastal management is a required element as part of the comprehensive plan. And when we're going through this process, we're identifying different plans or processes that are going on at the same time. So we are utilizing as much information that we can at that right time and working with Adam and staff to make sure we're coordinating with those other groups. So,
I would think the beach management plan would either, at a minimum, be an appendix, or at the most, be the whole chapter. I don't know what it is, or how it's going to turn out, but maybe an appendix.
and it may be dependent on how it's crafted. We do have to follow certain statutes to make sure we're addressing certain things in that plan.
Yeah, Andy?
The optional elements on the comp plan, and if we'll be looking at those like the historic and scenic preservation, or even community design were a couple that popped out. But in this process, I guess during the community, will those be elements that we'll be looking at, that the residents will be looking at?
Yeah, so to a certain extent, your future land use element's kind of a catch-all element, and it does address some of those things. Conservation too includes some of the either natural resources or community resources like historic preservation and those other items. Yes, depending upon what we hear, there could be additional opportunities for other elements.
Okay, as we have, unique areas within the community, so the scenic corridor that runs all the way up A1A and into the hammock has been a priority area, and just the preservation of our other natural resources, if that's covered under conservation.
Dave Sullivan?
Yeah, I think this is obvious, but it just so happens that the city of Palm Coast is doing their comprehensive plan right now. kind of simultaneously. And if this is going to be something, I mean, like it or not, I know we're focused on unincorporated, but like it or not, we're all part of the same county. So it'd be nice if there's some effort made to make sure we're not going down totally different tracks, or some coordination to make sure we don't get off in the wrong way on that.
And we anticipate, coordination with the municipalities as we, again, if they're working through their plan, we want to make sure we're, coordinating our efforts as well. Sure.
We also have a water management plan that's going to report out next week, I believe. I think next week. So probably we'll want you to see that.
Sure. Is that the update of the water supply plan? That's the stormwater master. Oh, stormwater master plan. Okay, excellent.
Got to fold itself into this. Leanne, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
I did, well, one, I think Andy touched on it, the historical land and
Right.
yeah. But the other thing, what would you need from us? Some of us in our districts have growth just on the other side in the other county that's going to be pushing into our county. Do you need like some information on that particular growth that's abutting us, or as far as, we have some I call it regional impacts that butt up against where we currently have ag. And so it's just kind of creeping in on us. So I am aware of the plans. There's a Northeast Regional Council has the plans for some of it. Is it something we need to get to you, or
So
do
is
you work
this-
with them ever?
Are these developments of regional impact that are on the other
Like
side of the
Putnam
county
counties?
line?
Yeah, yeah, and recent developments out in Flagler Estates on the St. John's line, that's gonna impact Flagler Estates on the Flagler line. So yes, there are a couple in my area, my district, that probably need to be looked at and discussed further.
Absolutely, yeah.
Then the other thing I'll say, and Mr. Boyd can probably speak to this, is when meeting with the public, there are a number of families that own a significant portion of acreage that may want to be, notified of any upcoming meetings. We need to get to them personally so that they can have input into it. Because they're owning the thousands of acres of our west side. So I'll leave that to Adam to try to get them notified of any public meetings.
I know we've got a list of folks already that we're looking at. So if you have contact, that would be great if you could provide. that.
Yeah, just Adam, you may remember this, but we did a chart once that showed the major landowners. Remember that? And maybe that might be helpful for something like that, just to have that available. It was kind of cool to see. There are a few people that own a lot of the county.
And we typically do that as well as part of the kind of the assessment of existing land use. We'll look at ownership trends.
Chairman?
Yes, sir. Yeah,
Could you
Mark?
talk a little bit about the public and the stakeholders that you're going to reach out to? Because I think there's a pretty vast group of people that you should probably looking at, from both, all the way from the development side to the environmental side, the homeowners, businessmen, and I just didn't know where you all were reaching out and who the stakeholders you're going to try to reach.
We haven't narrowed down the list just yet. I know Adam's provided me, 5 or 6 different lists that he's curated already. So we're still kind of in the discussions on who is going to get the invite. And if you have any other suggestions or ideas, we're happy to take those.
Mark, why don't you give him a list?
I can
Yeah.
come up with a list.
That would
yeah.
be great. Any other thoughts, ideas, things we need to know about as we
Well, there's an
start
area,
working through?
the area of the hammock over there that we really feel needs to be, have an overlay redone or looked at a little closer, with a little harsher rules for them, if there's a way to do that. We've thought about having their own chapter. We've thought about an overlay again, redoing what they did there. But it's just some of the restrictions over there because it's an all-American highway, and we just want to preserve that out there, so.
Understood. Any thoughts about the transportation system here in the county?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Sure.
So how is growth, you mentioned that every county is growing in Florida now, and of course, probably the next 25 years, we'll get more of that. How is that calculated or figured into or the projections of growth figured into this plan? Or what do you consider?
And so plans are required at a minimum to address what is referred to as Bieber medium, which is the University of Florida Bureau of Economic and Business Research. They do the population, they do the estimates and projections for the entire state. So all cities, counties are required at a minimum to provide a comprehensive plan that's going to address the medium projection that's prepared by the University of Florida. You can tell them, hey, we're built out, we're not going to have any more growth, so that's our justification. We don't need to plan for Bieber medium. We'll go for the low projection. I haven't really seen that work out for folks. There is also a high projection. What we like to do is look at the trends over time and look at the historic pattern to see where you're falling in terms of previous projections. We're working in another community where their projection was about 100,000 people off of the actual, which is a considerable difference. So projections, again, they're not predicting the future. They are helpful, but they're not the end-all, be-all. So that's why we have these different checkpoints, within the plan itself. So every 5, 7, 10 years, we should be looking at this plan to make sure we've got, there may be some tweaks we need to make in order to, as Adam had mentioned, course correct, up until that horizon. Because keep in mind, we're looking at 2050. So that's a long time. So
We're currently the third fastest growing county in the state,
yeah,
so.
and we're back to bringing in folks to Florida like we were pre-pandemic. So we're at 30,000 new people here in Florida each month. So it's a considerable amount.
Thank you.
Yes, Fernando?
So, the planning, the comprehensive plan, is really not binding in the sense that our demographic changes, business, commercial changes, and all the development going on. So you say that we must visit it every, 7 to 10 years? But in between, there could be changes made or here on the board ourselves. It's not 100% binding, is what I'm saying. Just that we have to make sure, because of state law and regulations, have a plan, but it's not 100% binding, correct? Is that what
It's not 100% set in stone. It is a living, breathing document, so things change. So yes, it does get amended from time to time. As you all know, you saw the future land use map. You've seen a number of future land use map changes, I'm sure. So we recognize that when you're planning for, say, a specific population number, the map may not accommodate that number yet. So you do have to make changes to the map in order to accommodate that growth factor. We don't always do that immediately during this process because we don't always know where the market is going to bring that population. We do know that there are areas of the county that we don't want to develop. We don't want to put utilities because it doesn't make sense. It's not, from a planning perspective, not a good idea. That may be overextending the county's infrastructure. So those are the types of things that we look at as we're, looking at the county as a whole.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You brought up the flume. Are you going to be addressing the flume? Are we going to be doing any work to look at, what we have and where we have? Because I have a serious issue with, if you put that picture back up, I'll show what I'm talking about, but.
Sure.
We have, a major city, Palm Coast, and so if you put the colors on there, you'll see something a little bit different, and you put in Benel, you see something different. But if you look on this map here, you see our purple is our industrial, and it's pretty much, you've got the airport, and you've got just a few tiny nodes outside of that. And the same thing with the commercial. I think that we just need to look at that, not to say, well, Palm Coast has it, so we don't have to have it. I think we need to look countywide and have a more balanced map. It's important not only for economic development, but it's also for the taxpayers' base too, because if we're doing everything that's putting the tax burden on just homeowners, because ag is mostly exempt, that's also not sustainable. So I hope we do look at that aspect of it, and that you'll probably get into that when you do some of your interviews with stakeholders, but I just thought that, it's very evident when you look at that map what we're lacking.
It's obvious looking at the map, and unfortunately, a number of communities are having the same issue, the erosion of industrial lands, because it's not as, marketable, right? And now with the Live Local Act, it's even more at jeopardy. So those are things we will be looking at, absolutely.
Yes, Ms. Sullivan?
Right, we're just beginning now to understand the significance of it, but this year's state legislation passed the Live Local rules. A lot of money going into workforce housing, whatever we want to call it, but it also affects ordinances and what you can follow and what you can avoid, if necessary to do the workforce housing. So I think that should be considered as we get a little better understanding of what that new legislation means. And it goes on for another 10 years, $150 million a year for the next 10 years, in addition to the $900 million in this current year. So I think that may be something significant to look at as part of this.
Absolutely, and that will be something as we start to look at the categories themselves to understand, do the densities and intensities make sense for today or into the future? And that will have an impact on the Live Local Act, as well as building height, which pushes down, to the Land Development Code, but those are things that we have to consider.
This is getting down into the weeds.
Yeah.
But how about a very clear definition of a PUD? Planned Unit Development. So a very clear definition. That's in the code, not the area?
LDC.
Right.
Okay. All right, never mind.
Well, you can have a planned development land use, but looking at your map, you don't have that, which is good. You don't want that.
Wanted to go down transportation. You tried that earlier.
Yeah, I tried. No takers.
There was a time not too long ago where, before the county started growing, it took you a while. You had to drive everywhere to get to something. But as we've grown, we've got more infill. And I don't know that we've caught up with our complete streets or interconnectivity and how that applies to our design. So I'm hoping we might be able to take a look at that. We've gone to great lengths to implement a pretty good trail system with Palm Coast, but I think other connectivity issues could be addressed in the comp plan.
Absolutely.
We paid for a study on could we have bus routes? And the answer was no. The problem was the first mile and the last mile on transportation. So I don't waste a lot of time on that, please.
So no transit.
Well, we've got a bus system in the county that works pretty well, but it's limited by the number of drivers and the number of buses.
Sure.
But
Primary disadvantage.
it's primarily for disadvantaged people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Small buses.
Yeah, they're small buses.
Any other thoughts on the transportation network?
Yeah, I think, Andy, you were talking about getting around, you know, like I've been here for a long time too. I think one of the problems that we have with it is we've concentrated an awful lot of traffic in small areas, like for instance, the airport area on 100. You need that to go through that corridor to get under 95 to get to the east and west. All the shopping is in one area. There isn't any good bypass to get around. And the same thing is in Palm Coast Parkway, which is a city issue. But yeah, maybe that type of thing too. It's not just trying to get buses, but it's also letting the cars travel that don't have to go through the local. You know, you have like a 95, they have 295s, you know, loops that go around. And maybe there's a way of looking at how that might be, you know, integrated in the future. Because as we keep growing, they can't keep putting all these cars, 100,000 cars on 100. That's just not practical.
Well, you see where we're going to build Commerce Parkway.
That will help.
That's
That will
gonna help.
help.
That's
That will
gonna
help.
help.
I do know that when that was first talked about years ago, that's because of Niagara Woods there, you know, trying to get their amendment in. People in Benel went crazy thinking, oh, we're in a bad recession and, you know, you're going to bypass our town. And, you know, that was many, many years in the future. But that is an important aspect. But that's one area. We need to
Right.
look at that in other areas. And this, getting under 95 is going to be a crucial thing too, because we only have 3 ways right now that I can think of that gets,
No, we just have 3, Matanzas Woods Parkway, 100, and Palm Coast Parkway.
yeah, well, there's the little
Royal,
Royal Palms things
Royal
too.
Palms, but that doesn't go underneath 95.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little tricky, right? Because a lot of that area is developed, you know, and to establish those corridors, it will be tricky. So, but definitely something we need to discuss, that east-west connection, you know, across the county.
You know, I'm sure that we see it in the planning board, I'm sure that the commissioners see the same thing. Whenever new development comes in or someone wants to make an amendment to an existing PUD or something, people get in a big uproar about, oh, there's gonna be traffic on our road, you know, and these roads have the capacity to take more traffic than what's there, but it's more than what they're experiencing now. And they do, and most people assume that we're not looking at it at all, and we just pass any old development. So it would be smart and wise to address this holistically and have some, maybe a little more visioning in what that's supposed to look like. But people assume if there's more traffic than there's there right now, then the road doesn't function, and that also isn't true, you know?
It is a sign of economic viability too, so.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
So I'm going to probably repeat it again, but we should probably implement a vigorous plan to have an outreach to the residents, because it's important that we reflect their efforts and what they think we need to implement in our comprehensive plan. I think that us 9 here, it's great that the county commissioners and the boards were getting involved, but it's super important that we really implement an outreach, you know, and get in touch with these folks, because they might have some other great ideas as well, and we need to hear them.
We've got 3 or 4 planned.
Yes.
Yeah. So they're doing that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
As I said, I was going to repeat it again probably, but it is important that we really try to fill the seats at these community centers that we're going to be targeting to have these meetings.
Yeah, he brings up a good point. We've had a few outreach efforts for other things and we get 3 people.
Exactly, that's where I
So
was going at.
this is it's gonna be incumbent upon you guys to really get this word out. And we in the county, our people will certainly help you do that.
Free pizza.
So,
Free pizza.
Free pizza.
Free pizza, they'll show up. I'm not teasing.
We did a little bit of work for the city of Benel back in my early part of my career, and we offered barbecue to folks. That was for the Benel CRA. So I know folks like barbecue here. Maybe that's what we got to do.
yeah, Nick wrote free pizza.
That's good.
But you're right. We need to get the folks out to the workshops. And thankfully, I don't know if we're doing something right in what we're, advising our clients on, but the last 5 or 6 workshops that we've done in different communities have been really well attended. So, and in some cases, standing room only. So I don't, want to pat myself on the back too much. It's not all me, certainly have to work with the community to get the word out for sure.
I wanted to go back to on the transportation side. As the chairman was alluding to, we have a point-to-point public transportation system. And, I know we've looked at it in the past that a fixed route system it doesn't work, especially in the core population areas of Palm Coast, just because of as the chairman said, you can't get to it from 2 blocks away. It's just too hard to get to, maybe to bus stops. But I'm wondering if over the longer term, as we are urbanizing certain corridors like the, Route 100, maybe we could consider a hybrid type system that might have some of that point-to-point element in it for folks to take advantage of or us to look at.
These are great ideas. This is something we could put directly into the plan. Oh, that's great.
The team that did the study before looked at a north-south on Belterre and east-west on 100 and Palm Coast Parkway. They looked at those kind of routes, and that was all they could come up with.
Yeah.
And the issue there is still, as Donnie said, it's the first mile and the last mile.
Right.
You got to get to the bus. You got to get to it in order to ride it.
Get home from the bus.
Yeah, get home, the last mile, get home from the
Yeah,
bus.
and not to say the county is ready for this, but in a lot of communities, they're dealing with this through micro-mobility,
Driverless cars.
that or sharing, the electric bikes or sharing electric scooters. Those are things that they're doing in a lot of communities.
Right.
But no, that's the good comments. And, sometimes you've got to start small, right? You've got to start on a corridor or a circulator or something that, makes sense.
Maybe it works A1A or, through Flagler Beach or east-west on certain sections of State Road 100. Again, we're seeing more and more infill and urbanization over time, so limited.
Anything you want to bring up on the coast? I know we talked a little bit about the coastal management element as well as the vulnerability assessment that's currently going on right now.
We have a lot of beach access, and maybe we don't have enough, but, a look at or a discussion, or maybe prompting of a discussion with the residents about marina access, boat launching, and that side of it.
On the beach side, we are evolving a problem that the city of Flagler Beach feels that the county needs to be involved with, and that is right now we have Route 100, which is the free access over to the island. And most of that traffic goes into the city of Flagler Beach. And they have limited parking and so on. So the question is to develop, should we just be thinking about developing an access from the mainland onto the island for the more northern part of the county, where a lot of our beaches and things are. The problem is we have a bridge, but it's essentially a private bridge that charges a toll. So given a choice, people will go to 100. So I have just, this came out in a recent meeting we had among a lot of the people involved. So I think it's something to consider. I don't know if this is a comprehensive plan where you think about that or not. I'm not sure. What we're talking about is better access across the intercoastal waterway.
Sure, and we won't solve that problem as part of this plan, but what we can do is, put in a policy that will study that down the road and identify maybe corridors or opportunities for those connections.
No, that's exactly right, because the city of Palm Coast was kind of toying with the idea in the future, where could we put a third bridge up at the northern point? So ensuring that we have the land set aside or thought about as the population grows for putting in another bridge, another access point, especially when it comes to evacuation off that,
Very true.
Marineland area as it grows.
Do have to admit something, full disclosure, I grew up in Gainesville, and so I admitted to these fine folks that we used to vacation here in Flagler Beach every year. That was the highlight of our summer. So absolutely loved coming here.
I thought you were going to say
As a
Crescent
kid.
Beach. That seems like where everybody from Gainesville.
Right? You would think that. That's where we went for spring break. The families went to Flagler Beach. So.
Yes, sir.
Will we be looking at the coastal high hazard, coastal flood hazard areas and development impacts in those areas?
Yes. Yeah, that'll be part of the update, making sure those maps are revised, and also look at sea level rise, which is now a requirement. And that was kind of part of the peril of flood amendments that the county's already done, but we'll go ahead and freshen those up a little bit.
Got some redevelopment risks within areas that have flooded already twice. And so it's definitely a recent occurrence, whereas, personally can't recall 50 years back having some of the frequent flooding that we do now.
Right, and the erosion, and we don't have to look too far from recent hurricane activity and what happened to our neighbors down south, and that wasn't even a direct hit. That was just a mere glancing blow, and we see all those buildings that were lost in Volusia County. So. Any other
that all
thoughts,
you got?
ideas? So thinking back to the elements that we have in the plan, tell me a little bit about housing affordability here in the county. I know it's something that most of the communities that we work in are struggling with, and just would like to hear your thoughts on that.
Or Florida, it's
Yeah, it's Florida. 1,000 people a day. There's a lot of issues with workforce housing that the Live Local bill tried to solve. It may work out for us. I'm not sure. We've identified some land that county owns that could be used for that. But if you're going to do that kind of housing, it still has to be near shopping centers and grocery stores and things like that, or they're no good. So, and there has to be some kind of cap on resale of the, there's a lot of problems with that we tried to pass an ordinance that would encourage people to try to build workforce housing here. But we were pretty naive when we put it together, and we didn't think about things like, resale value and things like that. So I think it's something that we need to work on, and it should be in the comprehensive plan. There should be some area that looks at this, but there's a lot of issues with that, and I think we need some, not a lot. We need some. Apartment buildings are going up like crazy in the county, and there's more planned. So, or I should say in the county and the cities. So it's an issue that's pretty hard to tackle. But we need some guidance. I think we ought to think about the guidance, and, because we're going to need something. Even if it's reducing the required size of a house, so small houses would be eligible to be built, or things like that. Just, there's a lot of little things that we need to look at. And I think we should work with you on that and try to get something put together that makes sense and gives future people guidance on how to do it. Because I think we're going to have to do it.
It is required as part of statute to address affordable housing in your comprehensive plan.
Well,
You already do. It's already in your housing element.
You can see, if you look at what's going on right now, the industry, if you will, that's probably going to be the first thing to take off here is medical. We have 2 hospitals now, a third one planned. We have 3 nursing schools. They've got to live somewhere if we want them to go to these schools and then stay here. And the same with our law enforcement and our firefighters. We've got a great program to develop firefighters in the high school, but if they can't afford to live here. So, yeah.
Other thoughts, ideas on housing? Just kind of going down the list. How about parks and recreation? We touched on trails.
We have 28 county parks. They're all good. I mean, I like them. We have some fantastic parks. And the city does too. And we just did a review with the city on our parks.
Still in the middle of that.
Yeah, they are.
Right.
A joint effort between the city and the county to look at our overall park master planning within the,
Yeah, so tap into that, tap into
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely.
Just on that note, that goes back to me saying about abutting counties coming in on our west side. What you'll hear is our west, our ag area. There are some planned development in those counties that will have an impact on our parks and recs in those areas, especially our boat launch use. And I know that we have we have boat launches over there, but they have limited capacity for parking and stuff. And so as they add more tournaments and things that are going to be coming in on the backside, which we can talk about outside of this meeting, I think we need to look at conceivably more area in that area.
Yeah, there's
for
going to
boat.
be some destinations on some of those lakes now that aren't there now, that people are going to want to go to by boat. People in Flagler County want to go to Putnam County by boat. So that's,
Yeah, so we need
Leanne's
to
right
look
on
at-
there. We need
Yeah, we don't have
to
enough
look at
space for that.
How about open space?
Well, we've got a pretty good handle on that. We're requesting money each year from the state to buy more and more lands,
Oh, excellent.
and we're doing that. And we're trying to create a historical preservation corridor in the North County with Princess Place and the Ag Museum, and kind of tie that all together. And I think we got a good plan going on that. I don't think we can do enough. It just takes money, to establish.
land acquisition.
For land acquisition.
we have some very high-quality gems within the county on
do.
open space between Graham Swamp, Princess Place, and others. The trouble is the encroachments. So a lot of them are high-quality ecosystems that have to be protected. So we have to look at at setbacks and bufferings and proximities, set aside areas, just some protections. If we're going to have these open spaces, we have to make sure we're making sure that we don't encroach too much.
We have the last pure estuary in the state here in Flagler County, the last one. So
wow.
we want to protect that, and we've done a pretty darn good job of buying up the land all around it between us and St. Johns County. So it's pretty well protected, but we got to make sure we protect it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
You know, when you talk about open space, one of the things I think a lot of times we miss the boat in is that on a PUD level, even DRIs especially, but PUDs, the traditional development is you just keep putting row after row after row of houses with these setbacks and whatever, and you end up with not a lot of open land, where if you were to combine housing in more of a cluster and create within the PUD more open space within each one, you would have a better attempt to get more open space and leave some of those estuaries that are locally. Because what they normally will do, just to fit the requirement, is they'll do the wetland buy-off. You go to the bank and you pay off the bank and tear up the wetlands and just keep making row after row after houses, urban sprawl, versus having more of a combined, maybe height would increase and put some of it closer. It seems to be where development is going anyway, if you keep seeing where we keep seeing developments coming in with smaller and smaller setback, asks.
And I think that's where I think the definition of a PUD and the requirements for a PUD, we need to really focus in on, and although that's not
Right.
part of this effort,
Right.
but
But-
to have open space and also have wildlife corridors right in the
That would be
neighborhood.
but that would be in our visioning to encourage that within PUDs and DRIs, that they would look at that option to increase the open space by concentrating development within those. I mean, you can't do it in a 5-lot or 10-lot subdivision, that's not big enough. But these 50, 100, 250s give you an opportunity to maybe look at a little more creative design in the layout versus just row after row of houses that are, 60, 80-foot wide lots and setbacks all over the place and so on and so forth.
And provide those meaningful greenway connections, between your open space.
Right, we see the greenways
County.
in the hammock, that's something we've been seeing with those developments, which is good. Those connectivities for the wildlife.
Chairman?
Yes.
Maybe this is not a problem or something that can be addressed, but I've come across this now in our dealings in the last few weeks and months. We've got a lot of agreements that were made 20 years ago. And all of a sudden, the developer wants to put them in effect, and it's, the agreement was like 20 years ago, and all of a sudden, they clear-cut the whole area. And we said, well, how did that happen? Well, they had clearance to do it. And is there any way to look at any of that kind of thing, these agreements that were reached in a different world, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago?
We could
and all
probably
this-
put expiration dates on them, but the ones that are already done, they
I
could
know.
pretty much be
I just say,
grandfathered in.
but I'd like maybe a better handle on what's left, that's out there. I mean, Adam probably knows it better than any of us, but I do think we have that kind of a problem too. And that might be something to address. I don't know how you'd address it, but at least
Well, you
mention it.
You put time limits
Yeah.
on it, expiration dates.
Sure.
And so we could prevent what's happening now in the future if we were to do that.
But with existing entitlements and property rights, you want to tread lightly.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
But all we'd ask is put an expiration date and they'd have to come back in front of the commission. That's all we'd ask, so.
I think what Mr. Sullivan is saying is where we know that there's going to be an outcome of a development that was approved a long time ago that we're not going to like because it's cut back, it's the surrounding lands that have not been developed around it. Maybe we talk about making that more of the green space because we know that future development in that area is not going to be something that really fits, with what our vision is now. There's only a couple of them, I think, left out there. not very many, but, we take a look at the abutting lands and say, okay, let's see how we make this a green space corridor, because what's coming in there doesn't really fit with the vision any longer, but we have to let it in. But how do we make it, flush around it?
Yes.
I think
Fernando.
I think that we should look at priority investment, see where we can get some state, local, federal funds or whatever for a public infrastructure. Look at a maybe 10, 15 years a goal of 10 or 15 years down the line. Maybe put that in there, because there's monies out there. We need to try to find it, locate it, and bring it back home. Bring in outside money.
Sure.
And,
Absolutely.
And probably even look for areas here in the county that we want to see investment occur, and use that money, for that. Or, I mean, I don't know if that falls more into the economic development area, but again, I'm mentioning state and federal money. So, but you know what I mean.
Sure, and the county's already doing that, to a certain degree.
Yeah,
They've got
absolutely, but
capital
I think there's
improvements that are
more.
coming up. We're looking at, additional funding opportunities. So, yes, and looking at high priority areas, so those areas that you want to see reinvestment, not just public expenditures, but also private dollars too.
Exactly.
So
Into
that, yes,
our
that is,
infrastructure, our very own infrastructure as well.
sure, and that is part of your economic development strategy.
I think this is something to keep in your back of your mind. We all agree that we can't not stop somebody from doing something with their land. It's property rights. But we as a commission and the planning board, to get working together, we can manage that. We could manage it, but we need the tools to manage it. And I think that's what this document is going to give us, is the ability to require things of a builder.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I have another question. Chris, how much do you guys put your crystal ball on and look into the future as far as technology and how technology will be shaping things in the future? I mean, one example could easily be, the advent of self-driving cars is here. And, AI is incredible. The idea that cars could be easily driving themselves down the road, and the way we do parking and the way we lay out things for the existing car thing may be completely different in 25 years. That's what this document is. This document actually from today is almost 27 years, but are you guys looking at how, the technology nodes and how we're going to have to try to get, right now we're struggling getting enough internet on the west side of the county, but to look at how we keep managing that, it's critical right now. It'll be imperative as we go forward. So do you guys put your crystal ball on and look at how technology affects development?
We do, to the extent that we can, You don't want to propose something or put something in the plan that you're not real sure about, because we don't want to tie your hands on something that may not happen. So, with the automotive vehicles, we looked at that. They said it was going to happen, 5 years ago, and it hasn't happened. And come to find out, AI can only get you like 98% there. It can't get you 100% there with the driving, because there's a human level that it can't imitate. So I don't know. We evaluate the plan based on technology, absolutely, but we wouldn't put anything in the plan that would, potentially hamstring you down the road if we're telling you to put all your eggs in one basket, for example, on a technology maybe that's not proven yet.
Do you open the door to allow those things?
Certainly.
That's what I'm saying, not necessarily hamstringing us, but it's the same thing if we don't look at that, what could be happening, and try to put elements in that would affect how we're going to have to deal with technology as we go forward.
And that's entirely up to you all. If that's where you want to go as a county, and, smart city, those types of, initiatives, those are the things that we can put in the plan. And so, definitely. Any other thoughts, comments?
Adam, you're going to be providing him with the wildlife corridor map, correct? Because I think that's one of the key, we haven't really actually bought a lot of that land that's actually mapped out in the corridor, but we are in the process of getting funds to try to acquire it. So I think that's real key to make sure that we continue to address that area, because that's a statewide initiative.
Right, and,
Yeah.
and it depends on the level of coordination you want to have in the plan. If you say we want developers to incorporate that as part of their open space requirement or
Yeah, that's
or
correct, because
something.
that's going to be like a key. I thought that, I think we all agree that wildlife corridor, it's kind of untamed right now for Flagler. We haven't really acquired a lot of it, so we want to make the opportunity to help Florida.
Don't worry, the other counties are in the same boat. Trust me.
Please
Trust me.
take my money. So, yeah.
Commissioners, anything else you'd like to bring up?
Gentlemen from the planning board, any other questions or any other remarks?
We will be back.
We will have a list for you.
Okay, we'll be back, and of course, join us during the public workshops. That would be
Well, we're about to
amazing.
have your first public workshop.
What's that?
I said you're about to have your first public workshop tonight,
Oh, excellent.
all right? So if you're done, I'll now open the mic up for public comment. If you'd like to address the commission on this subject, please approach the podium, identify yourself, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello, everyone. I think most of you people may know me. My name is Dennis Clark. I'm the chair of the Scenic A1A Pride Committee. I was also a member of the committee that helped produce the current comp plan, so I do have an interest, and thank you, Adam, for including me in that. The current comp plan has 27 references to the A1A National and Scenic and Historic Coastal Byway, but it's called, interestingly enough, about 27 different ways in the document. So we can probably correct that in some way or other. We hope to keep those references in the new comp plan. Scenic A1A Pride has submitted recommendations for changes in both the comp plan and the land development code based on issues that we've seen over the past 15 to 20 years. So Adam has a copy of that, but I can always provide another. And we are also reviewing the extensive 2003 charrette, which was to determine future growth for the Hammock and Flagler Beach, and we're currently reviewing it to see what's worked and what hasn't worked in those years, those past 20 years. So we've made a little bit of progress on that as well. So we have a summary of that if anyone's interested, or at the next public workshop. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Next speaker.
Robin Paletta. Good evening, chairs and commissioners and planning board members. Just a couple comments. In taking into consideration east-west traffic patterns, Citation Boulevard was originally designed to be an interchange on I-95. I think that really bears looking into again. Also, in terms of infrastructure, as a member of the Halifax Plantation HOA Board, as a director of that board, we're very concerned about the intersection of Old Kings Road and Old Dixie Highway. I'm wondering if the county, I know Adam at one point said that they were in communication with Volusia. I know Volusia's been doing a lot of traffic counts, and I would think that that would be a huge, huge improvement to take care of that intersection, putting in some lights. Perhaps the biggest one, though, is this is such a wonderful opportunity to look back and to see where we can go forward in preserving our open lands. And there's a huge swath of land on the east side of Bulow Creek, between Bulow Creek and John Anderson Highway. And I know a large part of it is under private ownership, and it's not slated for development yet. But I would certainly hope that the Land Acquisition Committee would look seriously at targeting that parcel south of 100 and between Walter Boardman. Well, it doesn't go quite that south, but I think everybody knows the segment I'm referring to keep that open with some kind of county park going in and access to the creek. It is a Florida Blue Way, and I think it would also feed into the wildlife corridor that would run north-south, east-west. I don't know, because you've got I-95 and then US 1, which are impediments. But when there's a will, there's a way. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Next speaker. Welcome, Dave.
David Eckert, live at 115 Callydale, sir. I'd like to ask the consultant if they have any experience with areas of critical state concern in any of the counties that have used that before, because I'm trying to investigate it. And in the area from north of Malacompa Road up to Matanzas Inlet, you'd have to cross 2 counties. But given the discussion, I'd like to applaud both groups tonight for covering this agenda comprehensively. But I think it's an area that we should evaluate because of the wildlife history. We have close to 40 years of history of DRIs being developed, and wildlife censuses had to be done during each of those DRIs and reported against continuously during all those years. So it forms a historical base. And I'm interested in the marshlands, especially to the north, but these also run down all the way to High Bridge. If those wildlife census, and that's for land animals as well as sea life through the St. Johns Water River District, can be measured, I think it would be important to tie those into the corridors that Leanne was talking about relative to creating the 27-year plan forward. Because if we look at preserving the wildlife census during that period of time, and also an awful lot of that land is owned by government from Malacompa up to Matanzas Inlet. It has historic significance up to St. Augustine. And I'm interested in trying to see whether it's an advantage for the county and the state to use the 1972 statutes relative to areas of critical state concern to help develop these areas, because a major highway across from Old Kings Road through the agricultural area down through Princess Prices over to the north part of the county would be the logical place, as you discussed tonight. So I'd encourage you to keep helping me, and I'll help you relative to these ideas.
Thank you, David. Next speaker. Yes, ma'am.
Isabella Herrera. While it is great news that Flagler County is considering taking on new initiatives for community planning, I want to reemphasize, as many of you all already have, how important the conservation of our coastal ecosystems are in any future development plans for Flagler County. After seeing the devastation of multiple hurricanes and other extreme weather events in recent years that have been brought upon our community, it is mind-boggling that there's still so much clearing of coastal forests and acres of wetlands, especially surrounding the Intracoastal Waterway, lining Palm Drive, Flagler Avenue, and all these areas that, as someone mentioned, flooded devastatingly during Matthew, Irma, Ian, Nicole, even though those were not direct hits. And as many of you may know already, coastal ecosystems provide countless benefits and services to our local communities. And Flagler County website even states that our objective is to make the best land acquisition and management decisions to preserve and conserve natural areas for future generations. So one of the questions and issues I wanted to raise is that why so many of the hundreds of acres surrounding State Road 100, John Anderson, Roberts Road, Colbert Lane are not being prioritized in initiatives such as the Flagler Blue Way project of the Florida Forever program, and why some of these lands are not being considered in a lot of the money that the county has received for land acquisition. The areas north and south of State Road 100, for example, directly connect Bulow Creek State Park, serve as a connection for Betty Steflik and Graham Swamp. And it's super important that those, especially considering the flood mitigation, water filtration services, and biodiversity support they provide for the region, that those are protected and considered in any kind of land planning going forward. And yeah, I just want to emphasize that coastal ecosystems are our community's first line of defense against extreme weather, against these hurricanes that we're going to continue seeing of increasing severity. And I hope that for the sake of the future of Flagler County and the well-being of all of its inhabitants, that this is an integral component of any future planning in Flagler County. And thank you all for acknowledging so much of this already, but I just wanted to reemphasize it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker. Seeing no one approach, I'll bring it back to the commission and the board. Commissioners or board members, any comments, any closing comments?
I'd like to thank everyone that came here tonight. It's important that your input is heard, and that's why we're up here. And so I leave it at that and hope to see you and your friends and your neighbors at one of the upcoming meetings.
So Chris, you got your first county meeting, public meeting done, okay? So now you only have 4 more to go.
Thank you for that.
So any last comments, Chris, or you?
Nope, that's it. I just want to echo your comments. I'd love to see as many folks here in the community join us at one of our workshops.
Yeah. Well, thank everybody for coming out here. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We're adjourned.
I'll second that.